Hi everyone, this is Erica from Gokche Capital, and this is episode 3 in our Gokche Investor Series. As promised in the last video, this video is about the end-to-end acquisition process. Now, this process is going to take more than one video, so this will be our mini-series on the end-to-end acquisition process, and today we're focusing on ownership verification. But first, just a quick story about another mailer. So earlier in the year, we had sent a mailer to a high activity county at 200 per acre. Then a few months later, we sent another mailer. When we checked, though, the comps had gone down in the area, so we sent the mailer at 180 per acre. In the second mailer, we got a number of accepted offers, one of which was from someone we had mailed twice. So they had ignored the first offer and accepted the second lower offer. Moral of the story here is price is not always the primary factor when it comes to selling. Sometimes it's just about timing. And second, we got a question on our last video. Syrian, apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, asked how many units of mail do we send out each month? So in the last 12 months, we sent out 89,550 units of mail. That averages out to roughly 7,500 units a month. And if you'd watched our last video, that breaks down to roughly 5,250 units of mail to high activity counties and 2,250 units to low activity counties. So thank you for your question, Syrian. And if any of you have any other questions, feel free to ask in the comments section. Okay, so quick recap from last time. We went over at a very high level how we pick counties, how we decide on the number of units to send, and gave our strategies for sending mail to low investor activity counties. In this upcoming mini-series, we'll now go over the actual acquisition intake process. So what we do between the time when we receive an accepted offer and when we record the deed transferring title to us. So this roughly covers all of the due diligence we do and then the actual closing process. You can see the list of our due diligence items here that we'll go through in the full mini-series. And this is, roughly speaking, in order of importance to us, but today we'll focus on ownership. And before I go into a little more detail, I should say this whole mini-series is going over our process. It's not necessarily meant to be a training video or a template for what you should do. We're just letting you know what we do. And we're going to go over in broad terms our due diligence process. But I should say, for anyone, if you have any doubts or questions, it's always a good idea to contact a lawyer or a title company. Don't just try to follow our template. Okay, so with due diligence, the very first thing we do is confirm ownership. And this is, in broad terms, we are just trying to make sure that everyone who has signed the purchase agreement and everyone who will sign the deed are in fact the legal owners of the property and that no legal owner is being left out. So if we get a purchase agreement and it's signed by an individual or individuals, we just compare the names of those individuals with the assessor records, make sure they match. Now, what can happen is there are more individuals listed with the assessor than there are who signed the purchase agreement. And often this happens because, unfortunately, one of the legal owners has passed away. So in this instance, we then check for joint tenancy to make sure that the surviving owner has sole title. And just a really quick question, story about a mistake we made in our first couple months in the business. So we got a purchase agreement that was signed by one owner. We were very excited. These were our first couple purchase agreements that we had received. So we did rush through the process, and we did not double check the names on the purchase agreement with the names in the assessor record or the vesting deed. So we got the closing package together, and then at the bank realized that there was the discrepancy. So we had to go back, redo the closing documents, and it actually turned out the missing owner lived in another state. So we had to tweak the closing process to account for the two locations. So moral of the story is, do not rush through due diligence no matter how excited you are. Okay. And then just a few quick notes on joint tenancy. And again, when it comes to these kinds of concepts, it's always a good idea, if you have any questions or doubts, to contact a lawyer or a title company. Don't just make assumptions or go off of videos that you've watched. But at a very high level, when one of the legal owners has passed away, usually the property will need to go through probate in the county where the property is located in order to fully transfer title to the surviving owner. Now, this process can be bypassed if the deed is a joint tenancy deed, and usually there's just a line next to the grantees that says joint tenants with right of survivorship. In that case, you usually just need to record a death certificate when you are purchasing the property. Now there are some exceptions to this. There are a couple states that are common property states, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but broadly speaking, again, in a common property state, any property that was acquired by spouses during marriage is automatically basically a joint tenancy property. But as with all of this stuff, again, always a good idea to consult a lawyer or title company. Now, another common form of ownership is when a property is held by a trust. So what we do when we get a signed purchase agreement for a property held by a trust is we ask for the trust documents, and we check the trust documents to verify that all the listed trustees have signed the purchase agreement. Now, if one of the listed trustees has passed away, then we check the survivorship provisions of the trust documents to verify that there are not any missing designated new trustees that need to sign. So a quick story on a trust. We received a signed purchase agreement where the property was held in a trust. The signer of the purchase agreement was adamant that they had the right to sell as the sole trustee. Now, when we got a copy of the trust documents, we saw that the trust originally had two trustees, one of which had since passed away. But the survivorship provisions were not entirely clear. That is to say, it wasn't clear whether the surviving trustee became the sole trustee or whether the children were now joint trustees. So we took that lack of clarity to mean that the signer did not have the sole authority to sell. But since he was adamant that he was the sole remaining trustee, we asked him for a letter from the law firm that had drafted the trust confirming the survivorship provisions. And then we never heard back. So the moral of that story is, if something doesn't make sense, trust your gut, and it's often a good idea to bring in outside help. Don't rush to closing, because you can end up with clouded title. And finally, there are also properties that are owned by LLCs. So if a property is held by an LLC, we ask for the articles of incorporation and the operating agreement to confirm that all of the authorized signatories have signed the purchase agreement. And that's about it for our due diligence on ownership. Again, roughly speaking, we just want to make sure that the person who signs the purchase agreement and the deed is actually the legal owner, and that all legal owners are signing. You don't want to have title issues when you're then trying to sell the property. So, what's coming up in the next episode? We're going to continue this little mini-series on our due diligence in acquisitions, and we'll dive deeper into some of the other due diligence items that we check. And just want to mention that if you're not familiar with us, we do love giveaways, and we have a number of them. You can go to our website to learn more about our free land giveaway, free vacation giveaway, and free swag giveaway. But more importantly, for a limited time, we are also offering a free 15-minute consultation call for investors or anyone who has any questions about our process or land investing as we do it. You can send us an email to schedule at info@gokchecapital.com. Also, if you have any questions, please leave us a comment, and we will answer them in the next video. So thank you for listening, and more to come.